Well, I guess we should get started, seeing as we're running a couple minutes late. So, we do have a quorum. We've got 6 of our 8. We need 5, so that's good. Don't have any public right now, so I will not welcome them. Now if we could get a timekeeper and a minutes taker for this evening.
I can do minutes this time.
Great.
Time keep.
Okay, excellent.
I do that.
Easy.
All right.
Great. Okay. Next up, approving the November 24th minutes.
Everybody.
You're looking for a motion?
Yeah.
Move to approve.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimously approved. Any additions or changes to the agenda? No. Okay. Okay, so yeah, we'll move into Trailforks update. And this probably won't even take 10 minutes. So update on Trailforks stuff. I reached out to both RTC and RMT asking about basically managing how we intended to manage the well, I guess I should back up. First, I made an account, like a test account on Trailforks, just to see what the capabilities were. And the way that it works is you basically anyone can make an account, and the way that you're able to basically do things on the app depends on how much credibility you have, or like reputation. So you start a new account and you essentially have 0 reputations. You can't really do anything on it. So the way that it normally works, I think, is you visit trails, you leave reviews on trail conditions, and I had a good time and whatever. And eventually, I think your privileges get elevated if you do that. The other route is if you can, there are essentially a couple different bodies on that program. One is basically local trail associations, and then there are also admin accounts. I believe they're 2 separate things. And I believe either of those entities, because they already have admin access, they can essentially bestow that access on someone else. So I made an account for myself. I didn't notice any specific contracts or things that we would have been agreeing to. So I first made it with my own account, tested it out to make sure that there weren't any gotchas. Then once that seemed fine, I created a second account that was linked to our group forest email account, and gave it like an appropriate name. I think it was like Andrew's Community Forest BT. I think it's the username. So it's like very clear. Then I basically went into the section of Richmond with our trails and basically sort of like bookmarked or like favorited all the trails that exist in ACF. But because the account has no reputation, we can't really do anything with it. So it's kind of set up so you can easily see those trails, but we can't open or close them. And we can't really do much with them. So with that knowledge, I reached out to the Trails Committee and Richmond Mountain Trails separately. And basically told them, hey, ACFC is looking to sort of like gain ownership of these trails in Trailforks. We're trying to figure out how to make it work. I basically explained what I had done and how I don't have admin access, and I was wondering if anyone could help me. RTC got back to me and said, we are not admins. We don't even have an account. We basically let Richmond Mountain Trails do the Trailforks stuff for us. And then I also emailed Trailforks, Richmond Mountain Trails, and they did not get back to me. And so what I had heard from RTC is maybe I should reach out to Max.
Robertson. No, Jake Robertson.
Krieger, yes, Max Krieger. Because I think maybe he has the access. I didn't get far enough or so far as to email him, so I need to follow up because I have a separate email thread with him from RCC stuff because we've been working with them. So I have his contact info. But I hadn't heard back from the main Richmond Mountain Trails email, which is the first one I used when I sent my email out. So essentially that's the update. We have an account. It's not really able to do much right now. We're trying to work out some of the details. In doing so, it sounded like RTC wanted to try to coordinate more, which I think is great, just to do some, more community building. I also reminded them and asked them if they had any thoughts about the empty seat. They said they don't have anyone at this time, just because I guess the people on RTC right now are all committed enough that they feel like they have the capacity to join a second committee. But that's basically where I left things with RTC. And I'll have to follow up with Richmond Mountain Trails again to see if I can't get them to, promote the account. And if we can do that, then we can essentially start to manage some of the stuff we were talking about before, which was, can we rename, can we open, can we close, can we coordinate with, other entities in the area like Richmond Mountain Trails or whomever to see if we can sync up our trail closures with them. So we made some progress, but yeah.
Do you have to draw the trails in or do they appear?
They were already there. I had not tried drawing a new trail. There's gotta be a way to do it.
Right.
I would imagine you need to have like a promoted account, I don't know how many levels there are, but it seems pretty clear that the way that the Trailforks app works is that it's all based off of sort of like community effort. So maybe I can put in a request to become an admin, but then I think it would normally go to.
Sorry, then. Okay.
It would normally go to like a regional admin, and so they would have to look at the account and see like, oh, this isn't some, bot or like a, someone who's just trying to mess around on here.
Right.
So what's the goal? I thought, I remember that we were gonna just coordinate with RMT since they are doing the openings and the closes everywhere. Do you want the committee to take that back over?
We talked about it. Oh, sorry. Did you want to just give it a say?
I wanted to, sorry, I wanted to pin this one.
You wanted to pin ourselves?
Yeah,
Why would we pin?
well, because I think we're probably recording with, Robin's.
Beautiful mug, right?
Don't fall asleep, Brad.
No,
Yeah,
not like our president.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that, but now we can't see Brad.
yeah, sorry.
You can't?
Well, we can.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay. Whatever works. So.
Yeah, sorry, I interrupted.
Oh, yeah, so we had basically determined, ideally, we would like to have our trails synced up with the Maple Wind Farm and the other trails in the area, because the last thing we want is for all the trails to get closed on Trailforks except for ACF.
Yeah.
And then suddenly everyone's gonna just go to ACF.
And the conditions are more or less the same in the
Yes.
whole neighborhood.
Yeah. But we were trying to at least be able to get to the point where we have access to make some of the decisions about the trails that like we're, supposed to be managing, on this committee, which included things like, we thought that the names weren't correct on Trailforks. And we talked about maybe splitting certain trails up into smaller sections so we could manage them for closure. So we're not necessarily trying to yank all responsibility away from everyone else in the community.
No.
I think a coordinated effort would be great. Jim had explained how he has like the admin rights for the Cochran's trails.
Yeah.
So he has sort of like veto power, but he's designated someone else who also has control. So basically, when that other person does all the closures and the openings for trails in the area, the Cochran's trails will automatically reflect whatever the admin is doing.
Right.
But he always has the power to go in and say, you know what, actually, this trail's not looking good, I'm gonna close it. Or, this trail looks great, I'm gonna open it. So that's essentially what we were trying to mirror, is a system where we're kind of in sync with the rest of the Richmond, community.
Yeah.
Trails wise, but that we would still have the ability to manage that if we need to. Because right now, we essentially have zero access to do anything with Trailforks. And because everyone is using that as their main source of information.
Yep.
It kind of presents a concern if we have no power over how those trails show up on it.
Right. Yes, so I get those objectives. I wonder if it makes more sense to sort of get that control or to just agree with RTC or RMT or whoever's gonna be controlling those that if it's in Andrews Forest, it's obviously the committee's jurisdiction, so.
Yeah.
we could learn it and then pass that knowledge on as we shift to the committee, or we could just say, hey, change this name, change this trail, and then have them do it for us, you know?
I'm fine with either, right, as of right now, we don't have a strong enough connection with RMT that we even really have that avenue, so I think this is at least getting the conversation started. I had sent that email out, a week and a half ago, I think, and I still haven't heard back from RMT. So like if we needed to urgently close a trail because it was flooded or there was, it was a mess or something, right now, I don't know who to reach out to, and I could try to reach out to Max directly, but this is at least getting that conversation started. So I think we'll probably talk about it more, especially once the springtime comes and people are gonna be back out, on bikes more regularly. But if this is a good time during the winter to kind of try to make some progress there, and hopefully we can iron out a good process between us and RMT.
Okay,
So I feel that we do have a responsibility here and we have to be accountable. And right now, other people are able to enter information about Henry's Forest and we're not. So this is not a good situation. So it would be helpful to be able to contact those people who are entering information. There's a name attached to some photographs that have been entered, and someone obviously has put the trails up there, presumably from a GPS, some kind of GPS tracking. But my suggestion here is that since you're unable to gain access because you're not a recognized account holder, is it possible that Jim can? See, Jim is, sort of an authorized user for the company's trails, so.
I sent Jim an email, I don't know, I think I actually asked him about that, but I didn't hear back from him.
That seems to be a good avenue. I mean, our most direct avenue since you've tried, thanks for doing all that effort. I'm trying to get in contact with the important people, but the important people apparently haven't connected. But Jim may be the person who.
Yeah, I did reach out to him. I basically explained everything that I explained today, which was that I set up the profile and basically, followed the trails and set up the account. So we're basically set up to be able to manage them easily using the app. And I can also give, if people want it, I can give the login information out maybe after the recording was done. If people want access to see what it looks like in Trailforks, or you can just make your own account. But in any case, I did not hear back from Jim, but I know he has admin access for his own trails. I don't know if he's got regional access. What I did do though is when you go to a trail in Trailforks, it will tell you what the sponsoring local mountain biking association is. It really is geared towards mountain bikers. You can select hiking or other activities on Trailforks. Yeah, but it does seem primarily geared towards biking.
that's what I thought.
Yeah. And so ultimately, it says right there, Bimba and Richmond Mountain Trails on all the ACF trails. It's the sponsoring, I can't remember what it's called, local trails association. And so they seem like the right people to reach out to who would have access to the trails because, they're right there on the trail. So I figured that was the first step because clearly they have association accounts on Trailforks and according to RTC have been managing the Trailforks, trail opens and closures and whatnot.
I feel that the contact should not be Richmond Mountain Trails, it should be Town of Richmond.
Yeah.
As it is at Trailfinder. I mean, we're not on the Trailfinder, like Andrews Forest Trails are not on that, but all the other ones.
Yeah.
That the Trails Committee takes care of their own trail thing. And the responsible person, the responsible agency is identified as Town of Richmond and there's contact information.
Yeah.
So we don't have, but that would be the ideal rather than having this indirect route. But obviously the Trails Committee has made decisions, so I guess we defer to them.
Yeah.
Trailforks is the way to do it.
It could be, we need to talk more with RTC about it. I think ultimately we're just trying to get the ball rolling, so. Yeah, I totally get that. It is a little bit weird that if you go to Trailforks, we have no responsibility as the town of Richmond on that page for each of the trails. So hopefully there's a way for us to be listed at least alongside the other, if not in place of those other associations, but for now, we're just trying to, make an account, talk to the people who do have access, and I think that those are great questions, and we're gonna probably revisit them at a future meeting once we have a little bit more information from RTC or RMT. And then also perhaps RTC, because it sounds like they're interested in coordinating with us more. And I'm sure that will happen, especially once we finish the management plan and, talk about trail development and whatnot. So yeah, that's, I guess we're over by a couple minutes, so we should move on.
Yep.
So I'm gonna let you take the driver's seat here, Ian. Next up, we want to talk about sensitive area maps. Just for the context here, for those who don't remember, we've been working on the recreation section, and part of the recreation section includes the trail development parameters and like the trail proposal process. And in that process, it talks about drawing your trail on a map. And we decided a few meetings ago that we need to have some kind of standardized map, rather than people just print out their own map and decide whatever they think is important or whatever. We don't want people to waste their time. We also don't want people to use maps that are inaccurate. So we had discussed coming up with a standardized map that is sort of, been published by this committee so that everybody's looking at the same map and we all agree on here are where the sensitive areas are. And I don't know if we want to draw buffers on there or not, maybe we need a couple maps, but that's what this discussion is for us to talk about mapping and how do we come up with a unified map that, that we all agree on is accurate. So I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, I can share a screen and show a few things. I mean, we have a lot of maps. And I wanted to start by showing this one, which was made by John Haddon, working with Dan Wolfson and Jeanette. Yes.
Malone.
So the two of them are in contact with John Haddon, and he produced this map with their guidance, about which layers, which features to include in it, and he has the capability to revise it. And so, if we like the quality and everything of that map, that's good.
Who is John Haddon? I don't know.
Oh, he is. He's in Huntingdon. Yeah,
He's sort of he's a graphic designer. I describe him as a graphic designer.
Okay.
I've known him for a long time. Our daughters were about the same age, so we met through school. He's also a musician. He's kind of a Renaissance man. He has a weather blog, does all kinds of stuff. But anyway, as far as I know, he volunteered to do this for Jeanette using existing layers. I mean, he's just the map maker. He's not the source of the data. He just takes whatever data we give him and makes a map out of it. So he has the graphic capability to do that. Much the same as, Ian can do it in some ways. Bob Lowe can do it. Anyone who's familiar with ArcGIS or its spinoffs can make a map, and they just happen to use John. He probably made decisions like what color goes where, the size of the map, the proportions, which has been noticed. He used, Ian was explaining this to me the other day, and forgive me and correct me if I'm wrong, but he basically used a different type of projection. Like, you've all heard of Mercator projection. He used a projection that makes, sort of squishes the map out horizontally, which is convenient. It fits our screens better, but it's different from the more vertically oriented maps we've seen, which are essentially a bird's eye view of the property rather than looking at it oblique. But those are the kind of decisions he makes. But as far as what's there and where it is, that comes from anywhere for whatever sources he used, which was probably, I don't know, Ian, Arrowwood, VLT, UVM had some. Ethan, I believe, has done some, but that may be more on the forestry angle. But it's probably a combination, I would say, of Arrowwood and VLT.
Can you show it again, Ian?
So, so this John Haddon has the expertise. I mean, we also have a lot of maps.
Yeah.
And,
Can you show that map again?
sure, yeah, let me, if I just show this, we have a lot of maps, and so I guess that raises the question, have we already got an adequate map for what we want?
Yeah,
I think the assumption is, despite all these maps that a number of people have made, including Bob Lowe has been very prolific, but I think the assumption is that we want to make a new one. And so if I share, well, actually what I'd like to do is sort of show how the Haddon map can be developed. And I can sort of do that in real time, which I think is helpful. So this is using a software called QGIS, which I've learned how to use many features of it. And this is kind of a starting point with QGIS, that we have the map outline. We can put a background. There are various kinds of backgrounds available. That's one of them that's easily available. But then there are, on the left, there's a listing of the data sources that we have available, like the sort of official sources, or as far as we know, the sources that were used by Ethan Tapper and others in Generate and Arrowwood. Arrowwood archived these data sources, so that we believe they're official, and we can switch them on. Right now they're nearly all switched off, but if, for instance, if we want to see existing trails, then they come in. I see the whole screen, and we're not able to see the whole screen. I don't know if there's something about gallery that helps.
No,
That helps.
It's good.
Yeah, that's pretty good, isn't it?
That's good.
yeah.
Yeah, even better. So, I put in the existing trails just now. Now I've clicked on the existing roads, and they come in. Then there's perennial streams I can add. There are intermittent streams. There's hemlock forest, there's dry oak. So I'm gradually making this map more and more complex by adding in features from these different layers. The other thing that I can do is vernal pools, and I can put a buffer around them in paint. And I can put a buffer around other features. There's buffers around wetlands, hemlock buffer I can turn on. I mean, eventually, we got all of these layers, these features showing on the screen, and it's the best. So I think my suggestion is, I think given the tools that we have available and the expertise that we have available, if we can use this listing of layers and establish what it is that we want to visualize on a new map, then we can work on it using this QGIS and the data sources that are there. And when we've agreed on it, gone through that process of decision making, then we can, apparently Dan assures me that we can call on this John Haddon, who has the expertise to really make a map using his expertise, making it suitable for publication for use.
yeah, the one you shared at the beginning is a little easier to look at than this one. I like seeing all the layers get added on this, but something about the map that the graphic designer did was just a lot easier to take in. Whereas this is, this looks like a lot. So maybe I don't know if it's the colors, if it's the borders.
Well, I mean, it's
all that.
now we can build it up and we can take it back down again.
That's
The thing that is not available on the map that John Haddon made previously is buffers, but we can provide him with the buffers. So my understanding is that, and I haven't talked about this with Dan Wilson, my understanding is that potentially there's 3 maps that we might want to generate. And one, the existing maps mostly are based around a trail proposal, so they show those proposed trails. Whereas here we can step back and show existing trails as well as proposed. But the main, what it seems from what Dan has generated, unfortunately, he's not with us, but he's suggested to me that there are probably three maps. One shows the like natural features of the landscape of the parcel. One then adds the buffering around those features, which we've now decided on, so we can generate them. We can change the size of the buffers using this tool. So
the tool generates the buffer based on the existing area. Or is it a separate? Did somebody else generate buffers? Like all these 30-meter buffers? Like, do you know where those files came
the
from?
buffers, I generated them here on this map. I put in the outline of the pool or the stand of trees. And you take the outline and then you make it into a thick line. And so that outline becomes buffer. And the thickness is very easy to control. So I can change it from 10 meters to 30 to.
Okay, cool. So the program is using an actual like meter amount. It's not just, you're not just clicking the boldness up until you think it looks like it's 30. It's like actually locked into like the distance.
Yeah, using the scale that the map is being generated with. Okay. You can set the number of meters or feet.
You said 30 meters or 100 meters?
Well, these are 30, but what he was saying is now that we've sort of gone through the management plan and decided what the appropriate buffer should be for the various sensitive areas, then we could regenerate the map using buffers based on what we have, agreed on in the management plan.
Right.
So give us a more accurate depiction of everything.
But just so I know what layer is which, because it is a little confusing there. Can you put the layers back on and then you put 30 on just to try it, just to see what it would do? Is that why you put 30 on?
Yeah, 30 meters across is roughly 100 feet. So that is a buffer size.
A little more.
We'd use 50 as another one, in which case we'd make it 50 feet. We wouldn't use 15 meters, we'd use 30 feet. But right now it's easier to use meters. It seems that what we can do is we can generate a map that would start here. Then we could add in dry oak, we could add in hemlock, we could add in streams, wetlands. So all of these things which are ecologically important.
Yeah.
So then we'd have a map of
sorry, let me just ask. So I think this map is really cool. I think it's great, and it looks like it is generated. Like the natural information comes mostly from the Arrowwood map. Is that true?
Arrowwood.
The reason I'm asking is this: is because we, as far as I know, we have one seriously professional map that this committee has hired, which is the Arrowwood site.
They have a way to download data. Right, they have an interactive map.
Right.
And using the same data sources, but also from the Arrowwood site, there's a way that you can connect to the database, which includes the shape files for all of these features.
Okay, all right.
So the town using the same data source as Arrowwood use. Okay, good.
That's my question, because it's all fine and good to have recreational cartographers out there, but we want to make sure we're having as real information as we can get. So I'm just curious about where the base comes from. It looks like it matches up to the Arrowwood one, which is good. But are we certain that the information that this map is coming from is the information that the Arrowwood is basing their?
I went to the Arrowwood site, downloaded the data files that they use, the shape files.
Excellent.
They're called shape files. So that's the name of the file that say it's geographical information.
Great. Great.
So that this sort of could be a starting point, but I think it seems like we would need to be adding, there's the wildlife corridor. We would want to be adding buffers.
Yeah.
of the sizes that we've agreed, the dimensions that we've agreed.
And those, the buffers in your map would be the red, Ian?
Sorry,
The red are the theoretical buffers that you're using just for demonstration purposes? That's what it would look like?
Well, some color.
Pink color.
Yeah.
You know, that's all, that's probably a question for the graphic artist. You know, like
I'm just trying to
offhand,
understand what's on the layers. I don't really
yeah,
care about the
yeah,
color
but it
itself.
may
I
not
just
be
wanna
pink.
know.
Julian, I
Yeah,
was just
yeah.
making sure you weren't thinking it's going to be that pink, that degree of opacity.
I'm not the guy you want to consult with for colors, that's for sure.
Yeah, okay.
I just
No,
want to know,
Right.
what I'm looking at, that's all. So
Yep.
these are just, you put on 30 meters just to see what it would look like. If we put on the real buffers, it would look much bigger than that.
Yeah.
But that's what that red/pink someday to be maybe different color means.
Yeah, the color is easy to change. The dimensions are easy to change.
Yeah.
I can do that much with my knowledge of this QGIS. So, I mean, this is potentially, I believe, the kind of map that we're calling for trail planning.
Yeah.
Because trails are supposed to avoid buffer areas. There is one third map that Dan was proposing, and there's an important one, is a navigational map. So right now we have a map at the kiosk that shows these are existing trails, these are the forest roads. And we may want to update that and also identify permitted uses on those trails.
Yeah.
So there are potentially three maps. One shows natural features, one shows natural features with buffers, which is becomes a planning map. And then the third one is totally different. That would be the navigational map. That would include existing trails and existing roads.
And that one would be the one that would get the most use. That would be the one that anybody who wanted to visit the forest would be likely to use.
Yeah.
I would think so.
That
You know,
would be
it's
on the most public one.
Yeah.
especially, there's a spin-off on that too. I don't know if you've ever used, and maybe some of the biking map apps do this, but there's a program called the Venza, or an app. And I've got that. It's got the VLT map. I got it from VLT.
Yeah.
Downloaded this thing in the software, and that will show me when I'm in the forest where I am in relation to the features that they've mapped, and which is more limited than these. They basically have just mapped streams, and I think they're EPZ, the protective zones. But it's very cool. I mean, you really can't get lost when you have that. And it's
super
you can also,
precise.
it's like iNaturalist too. You can take a picture of something you see, and it will, you set it up so that picture then is pinned to the map at that location. There's a little flag. You click on that, and it'll show you whatever you took a picture of that day. It's really very neat. So
no, that's an amazing, Brad. That one, it's like the detail is incredible on the
yeah.
I would suggest that once we get our map sorted, I don't know how you do it, but we could look into publishing 2 events, because like there are a bunch of free maps, like the US Geological Survey maps are all available, so you can download them basically per town. So if I'm hiking around in Bolton, I can just pop, I don't have good service there, but I can open Avenza and see like, oh, I'm walking towards Stowe right now, and I thought I was walking in a different direction, so like I should turn around. So it would be great if we could get that on there, so that people would just download Avenza and then just go to they could just type in Andrews, Andrews Community Forest, and it would come up, and then you can just download it for free.
Right.
So,
Or we could have,
there are paid apps on there, but rather than forcing people to like find and download and then import a map or just some app, like that's a lot of steps. So you can just get it in there, like Map Store, and just listen if it's free. That would be a really nice option.
And my sort of an action plan immediately, my suggestion is what I can offer is using this tool and the data that we have available. I'll generate 3 draft maps, and one would be for natural features, one would be natural features plus buffers, and the third one would be navigational. So that's my proposal. I'll offer that, and I can do it for our next meeting.
Does that work for everybody? I think that Yeah, I think either you should do it or like we should have a working group, 2 or 3 people that could do it. It sounds like you'd be completely capable of doing it yourself. I would just say we want to agree on what we're showing on the map. My suggestion would be just grab all the natural communities that exist in the the rec section that we've been working on, right? So basically just go by what we have in there, which would be, dry oak, hemlock, the intermittent streams, the perennial streams, basically go down that list
Yeah.
and then create the buffer per what we've put in the most recent version of
Based
the.
on what's in B6.
Yeah, and I would say we don't need the existing roads. Like those are kind of irrelevant in my opinion, at least for now.
I think.
Boy,
Well, would that be in
that's,
the third map as a navigational one, then it would be
okay.
similar to the one that's already at the kiosk that shows existing trails.
And
Really
roads.
vast. It shows a subset of the forest roads that are
Gotcha.
probably the most useful ones that.
I think, yeah.
3 or 4 on the kiosk map.
For navigational purposes, I would say like existing trails and the existing, forest roads, those make sense to be on the navigational map. I do wonder though, if we should, to me, I feel like the
You
existing.
wouldn't put them on here then?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it's, it's certainly open to discussion. My thought is,
Are you thinking forestry roads, old forestry roads, or utility roads?
I'm thinking like the
Forest.
old, the old forest,
Forest.
the old forest you can find and use.
Right.
But as we've discussed, in a lot of cases, they're actually not that well suited for traffic, especially in bulk, which is why I'm a little reluctant to put them on the sensitive feature map because they don't need to be buffered. And like, we don't necessarily want people to try to find and connect their trails to those roads because those are already a lot of them have been deemed as like not great for
Right.
people to be on anyway. Like there are better ways for us to put trails. I mean, in some sections, yes, maybe we could, tee into it and use it for a bit and then
Right.
veer back off. But when Ian had turned on every possible layer onto the map, it's just really hard to look at. So I was thinking, yeah, if we had all the sensitive features that match what's in the management plan as one map,
Yeah.
that same map plus the buffers as a second map. The third map would have like the forest roads, any basically road, whether it's the old vast trail, like existing roads, the old forest roads, like that is truly a navigational map for people who want to figure out how to, get around the
This
forest.
is what's up the kiosk currently.
Okay,
Yeah, right. That's what we have.
Yeah, it's not helpful, because you can't tell a trail from a utility road.
yeah, we need at least some, can you scroll down slightly? Was that me or is that you? Does it have a legend?
Is it?
No, there's no legend. So, oh yeah, there we go.
Right, there's a key.
Still not very helpful.
So it's, better than, just looking at the top, but,
I have a counterpoint though, Sam,
Sure.
which is that, well, I think that, what I think I would like to propose is that when you bring those next time in, let's try with and without the
Yeah,
existing trails and the forest roads.
Yeah.
Only because if you are trying to propose a trail and we have said that we want to prioritize trails on existing trails or,
Yeah.
then you're gonna want to try to match up where it makes sense. And even if you don't follow those because the erosion controls aren't right or the water's not right, there's a lot of trail systems that will build on old forest roads that will cross back and forth
yeah,
on those old forest roads with proper erosion and water control
yeah,
that don't go straight up the mountain like the road, or they don't go straight
Yeah.
across, you know what I mean? So like,
yeah,
it,
good point.
it may be helpful, it may be too much information, it may be too visually noisy.
Yeah.
But if you can bring, a couple of different versions with more maybe layers, maybe the fewest layers that you think are useful, and then like add some more in, and then we can sort of feel out the noise, I think that'll be helpful.
Yeah, I can do that, and I would like to work with Dan if he can get onto the same schedule, if we're aiming for the next meeting for like 2 weeks from now. I can do it, if I work with Dan,
That'd be great.
that should be better.
And here's another one. the Arrowwood map, you can choose what layers you want to put on there as just a user, you know?
Okay.
I can put more or fewer layers on there as I wish. We could do the same thing with this, so that someone who wants to come and propose, if the navigational one, we should make as just simple as possible. You have trails, you have roads, and I can find my way through the forest. But on this one, if I'm gonna propose something, I wanna know different layers of information at different times. So maybe we can do something similar where it's a live version of this and I can choose
Yeah.
my own layers as the user for whatever I want, you know?
Yeah.
That'd be a cool layer actually on our website to have on the ACFC website.
What
Or we could put a link to Arrowwood.
possible the tools that I have is to generate 3 static maps that we could print, you know, that can be put in the packet.
Yeah.
And also come to the next meeting or a future meeting with this QGIS tool that I was just demonstrating. So I can sort of show how I generated those 3
Yeah.
maps, and we can edit them in real time during a meeting if we
That'd be great.
want to do that. So
But
that's
for
possible.
what Julian, Julian, for what you're asking for, actually, it's on our webpage now. I believe there's a link to the Arrowwood interactive maps. So people can that's public can
Arrowwood's on
access.
there, but the one that Ian just showed us isn't on there, is it, Brad?
No.
No, but well, some of them are, it's gonna look different because they, you know, they have their own colors, they have their own background.
Well, whatever I mean, so I like the Arrowwood one because you can choose your own layers, but what I'm saying is, I'm not saying let's use that one, I'm saying the one that Ian is using has all the base layers, and it would be nice if we could allow visitors to the website or users to click through however many layers they want. In the same way that Ian is showing us now. We don't need to make a static map that has a fixed number of layers. We can let people choose.
Well, I don't know, should we get the Arrowwood map up and look at that, the interactive? I'm just thinking it could be reinventing the wheel. That's all.
Yeah, no, well, I was just showing, right, the Arrowwood map. It's got everything except, well, it doesn't have 2 things. It doesn't have the topo, and it doesn't have.
Oh, it has a topo. There's a command. There's a command at the bottom. There's like 3 or 4 I don't have it in front of you, but 3 or 4 icons across the bottom, and I think there's like a red grid. If you hit that, it gives you options on the background.
You are correct, sir. I stand corrected. Yeah.
So you can get that.
So I was gonna suggest that we just use the Arrowwood one because it's already there, but if.
What it doesn't
I
have.
didn't see there was topo on there. I thought maybe that Ian's was better, but yeah.
No, the topo's better because I hate that background they have. It's just too dark. But the other thing, the color on the roads is almost invisible. The existing roads, they used the white or gray. They're really hard to see.
Yeah.
And another failing, and there's no buffers, which was a problem from day one. They had no buffers except the VLT buffers. So it is weak on those particular points. So maybe we could recreate that. I don't know if we'd probably have to get some software, but
I don't think it would be hard.
Cool.
I think, like you said, the colors are the easiest thing to change. It's just a layer, and you just have to, whoever controls this, and maybe it's Arrowwood.
I would think so. I mean, what's the link? Like, what's the domain?
It's aevtmaps.arcgis.com. But it's obviously, I mean, ACF Ecological Trail Design, Arrowwood Environmental Sinuosity Trails. So they have obviously loaded this thing. And I mean, that's where you got this base information is what you downloaded into your application, Ian, if I'm understanding.
Arrowwood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you downloaded it from this map, right?
Well, from there's a directory of files, it's shape files. So I didn't, which is what they used to generate that map.
Yeah.
What I used to generate my map, but you have to download the shape files, which are, digital files that have the geographic information. Just as a matter of interest, those shape files, if I show the forest roads, they're in. I brought them onto this map. I've showed now on the map. They're the orange ones.
Yeah.
And you can see there's an awful lot of them.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that many of those are sort of navigable or useful. or even desirable.
No,
And maybe we have different classes of roads,
Yeah.
so that different layers.
Yeah.
Well, the existing roads, there's only one file for them.
Okay.
But yeah, so for the navigation, for the kiosk map, I did use a subset
Right.
of those.
Yeah.
Ones that I personally walked on, and I thought were useful ones, I used that.
So I guess what I'm saying is that, I'm sorry, but what I'm saying is I think I agree with that we need to agree on 3 paper versions that I think makes a lot of sense. And I would love to have the live choose your own layers version in our website.
Yep.
For somebody who's, geo curious and wants to know what these different things are. I think that'd be really cool. And I don't know if you can make yours like that, Ian. If you can't, then maybe we get Arrowwood to change up the colors to whatever we want.
Oh, the colours, I mean, in this map that I'm generating, I can change the colours to anything I want.
Yeah, yeah. So if we can make it, I mean, I don't care whose we use, but as long as the users can use it, that would be really neat. And I'm trying to track, just for the notes, you said 3 maps. There's the one with the sensitive features, there's trails and navigation, and what's the third map?
Sensitive features plus buffers.
Yeah, there's features.
Features only,
plus buffers,
features plus buffers, and then navigation.
and that's it.
Okay.
Just because I think it's nice to be able to look at just the features on the map, but then it's also obviously useful for us to have the buffers that we've discussed and put in the plan. So you can see like the full scope of the areas that we're trying to avoid.
Okay.
Right?
Yep, so the utility easements, the 2 easements are 225 feet wide.
Okay.
Should that be unless we're using the USGS map, we don't know where it is.
Yeah, I don't have a shape file for.
Right, so
for the
we-
lines.
We could go out and GPS the northern width and or the western width, and then the eastern width. And
Potentially, yes.
add that just so we have it, because
Yeah.
it's a huge reference point.
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
That we might be a dotted line or similar to that.
yeah, the power line appears on this map because it's in the background map, which has the topography and the
Right.
color and everything.
Right,
That's from OpenStreetMaps. That's the one that I can get access to.
right.
I don't know, we could look at the scale and decide how and determine if it's what the width of that white line is, but I think it's probably just from aerial photography, it's the land that's been cleared, it's probably what that white color signifies.
Yeah.
Whereas the green signifies forested land.
Right.
Yeah.
So do we want to, in addition to you generating those 2 maps, although it sounds like you've got your main 3 maps, but you might want to do a second version of a few of those to include the existing forest roads, right?
Let's have a look. I mean, if it's not too noisy, I think I would want it as a user.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know if you just can get the map set up, each of the 3 maps we discussed, natural features plus buffers, and then the navigation. And then if you could, I'm assuming the navigation is already gonna have the old forestry roads on it, right?
It has a subset of it.
Okay, so then,
Well, no, potentially it can have them all.
well, you could leave the subset and then do a second version of each of those 3 maps that also includes the forestry roads. Is that, like, I know that's 6 maps, and would that be hard for you to generate those 3 additional, just so that we could look at them both next meeting and see, okay, yes, this is way too busy, or this is actually fine. Either that, or we're just gonna be in QGIS live doing it, like, but it might be easier to just have them already pre-prepared, so we can just page through. And then look at them and then decide, okay, this is the one we like.
Yeah, so I mean, essentially a repeat of what we've been doing today. We can look at the static maps that seem to, I understand what's desired, but we can also go into real-time editing and as we've just been doing, picking up nails in the night.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. So you're gonna work on that. Hey, Dan, Ian had mentioned that he was interested maybe in coordinating with you at some point in the next few weeks, if you're available, to do a little bit more mapping stuff, and then we can talk about it again, next meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. And yeah, I think that answers all the questions I have. I think Julian, I like the idea of us, publishing or recreating, sort of an improved version of the interactive map. I think we might, I guess what I was gonna ask is, should we reach out to Arrowwood and or Sinuosity and ask them like, how did you generate this? Is there a way for us to sort of generate our own? I know there's, when you first load the page, there's a big disclaimer that says like, this is not official data, it's, they're sort of covering themselves with a disclaimer.
Yeah.
But it seems like they created and published the map. Also, that map has, the proposed trails on it, which are subject to change depending on, how the management plan goes and whatnot. So
Yeah.
we are going to put a new version of that up that has just what we want to show.
Yep.
Do we want to, in the meantime, reach out to them, or do we want to wait until after we have another discussion? I'd be happy to reach out and just ask them like, hey, how did you make this? Is there a way for us to change it, update it, like change the colors, completely remove some of the elements from the map, add our own.
It's a little bit like the Trailforks thing. How much control do we want versus how much do we want to rely on others to make changes? So if we go, this exists, by this, I mean the Arrowwood one, and it's public and anybody can log on, so it's got some really nice usability features. If we want to use that, then we just have to rely on them to make the changes that we ask them to do. I don't know if they're willing or not. If there's a way to make Ian's public and manipulable on
Yeah,
the Richmond
yeah.
site, that's probably preferable.
Okay, yeah, because I would agree, because
For profit, so they're gonna charge.
Right.
they may charge us if we're asking for changes. I'm also wondering if they generated that map as a way to sort of like finalize the product that they were asked to do, right? So they might want this map to stay untouched, and they might say like, hey, well, we could generate you a new one, and it's gonna cost $500 or whatever. But if I were them, I would probably want to keep this existing map and link sort of immortalized, so it's like, well, this is what we were paid for, this is what we generated, and we want to leave it untouched, because otherwise it kind of muddies the water. I don't know if that's their opinion, but that's just my thought.
I think they'd be happy never to hear from it.
Yeah, right. So maybe we hold off for a few weeks. We talk about this again in a couple weeks after Ian and Dan produce these maps that we discussed, and then we can talk about what we need to do to potentially get the interactive map up, and also if we want to consider publishing to Avenza once we have these maps figured out. Does that sound good?
And just to show where I was getting the shape from, it's from this
Yes,
this source. This is the Arrowwood website, and at the bottom of the page there's interactive map, which is the one that well, we never projected it, but I think Julian was showing it, and then this is the source of the data. It becoming
Okay.
there we go. Yeah, I mean, so that's that's where all the data are. You click on that folder and there's GIS data. So this is all
I think
all of it from shape files.
I think they are just uploading files onto like a universal GIS app, so it shouldn't be that hard for us to do the same thing. If you have the shapefile, then and if we come up with some more that are about our own boundaries, I think it's very easy.
Yeah, I just wonder if they maybe like if they have a license, do we need to pay? If they have a license so they can publish maps that people can view. I'm not sure if we have like publishing access, so we might just look into it a little bit more. Hopefully it's not that hard and we can just do it ourselves. I think it's worth exploring, although I think we're close, but we're not quite there, right? I mean, I think we have at least one more round of talking about this at another meeting. And then I think once we know what we want on the maps, then we can dive into trying to get this interactive thing set up. I mean, Julian, if you're interested and you want to poke around in the meantime and see if it's possible to generate something, more power to you.
I think it is. Okay.
Cool. So a little side project if you want to work on it. Won't hold you to it, but we'll get to it either way, and within the next month or two. I think we just need to nail down the maps that we wanna, print and post on the kiosk, and then we'll know what we wanna put on the interactive map as well. And then we'll also know, we want the existing forestry roads and stuff on them. Cool, any other questions about that before we move on? We're a little bit past time on this one. Okay. Moving on, to, revisions of the management plan. Let me just launch one,
Yeah, we're actually
15 minutes
10
behind.
minutes late.
So
Yeah,
I'm gonna stop taking notes and you're gonna project and we're gonna.
yeah. I mean. Yeah. Give me 1 second, I'll get that up. Got you. Working version of this.
Actually, while you're pulling it up, this ArcGIS stuff is actually incredible. The things that you can see in this, for example, the power company
Yep.
can use ArcGIS stuff to see where their I don't remember what they're called, the little tiny transformer things on top of their towers. When they get corroded, they have to, they spend a ton of money on personnel just driving up and down the line, looking at the little things on top of the tower to see if they're corroded and replace them. They can use AI to recognize what a corroded bit looks like versus a function of those.
Oh, wow.
And save themselves, tons and tons of man.
So they're looking at via satellite.
Yeah, it's incredible. What you can do.
A little better job this time. I'm gonna say that we just doing an animation. Let's show you finish. So we got a couple things here, I guess. We've got the document, so Brad and I met for a couple hours to rewrite and like talk through some of the trail deviation stuff.
Yep.
As a part of that, there were also, well, I guess it was sort of related, but also, was based on what we were talking about last meeting about how people wanted some actual diagrams about what we were talking about. These are some like quick sketches that I did. And this kind of helps us figure out like terminology so we know what we're talking about. So I don't know, would folks rather look at the images first and then we can look at the text, or do people want to look at the text first and then the images?
Go ahead and go to the images.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'll see if I can get this thing in a little bit more. So this is our, because you weren't here last time, were you, Julian?
No.
Okay, so we had our evening of various examples of,
This is the boiled egg.
yeah, we were talking about eggs and cookies and all kinds of things, because we were trying to describe what these like buffer examples would look like. So now you'll know, what I'm talking about. The cookie example, this is essentially terminology, using a simple like cookie example. So in the middle, we've got our sensitive area. And this isn't to scale, this is me just sketching, so, excuse me if the scale's a little off. So then we have our buffer here, so we've got our buffer zone, buffer width, and then we have, and we could change some of these are just the words that like Brad and I came up with, and maybe they're better descriptive, definitions for some of these. So then we have a trail, that's, impinging on the sensitive area by a small amount. And we have a fragmented area. So essentially a section of a buffer that has been cut off from the rest of the buffer zone would be designated as a fragmented area because the trail has basically separated it from the rest of its buffer. That's, comes into play when we're talking about area.
So the dotted line is the proposed trail.
Oh, I'm sorry. The solid line is the proposed trail. The dotted line is where the existing buffer was.
Okay.
So the dotted line you'll see right here in between, that is what I defined as incursion distance.
Gotcha.
Just because that is the amount that the trail dips in. So
Yep.
that's essentially the width from the outer edge,
Yep.
of the previous buffer
Yep.
to where the trail dips in at its deepest point. And then, and then we've got a fragmented area. So that's one example that just sort of sets some of like the definitions. So buffer zone, buffer width, fragmented area, incursion distance. Then we have a few just sort of like practical examples. I know Jim was asking, well, can we like see what this actually looks like in real life? Because all this like talking about, cookies and whatever is not really working for me. I didn't generate any actual examples of an existing sensitive area in ACF, but here are a few examples that I thought might be helpful. So one example, this is a wildlife corridor in the middle. We have a buffer, the dotted lines on each side, that's our buffer.
Yeah.
And then here's a trail that's close to a wildlife corridor that probably would be fine. I didn't calculate anything here, but we've got a switchback going up. Let's just assume there's some slope here, and it dips into the buffer a few times, but it's not by much. We do our actual math based on the text, but this is an example of what a potentially responsible trail could look like that would comply with the deviation process. Here's just another example, like threading between multiple zones. Sorry, that was I guess the yellow is not really showing up, but essentially we have I don't know. I was sort of thinking like we have a couple. I shouldn't have said EPZ. I should have said sensitive area. Sorry. But let's say in the bottom we've got a couple of vernal pools that have blue dotted lines for their buffers. Up top we got a couple forest stands. Let's call them dry oak. And then you've got a trail that's trying to fit in between. And for the most part, it's fine. I mean, ideally it wouldn't dip into any of them, but let's just say there was no other way. I wrote a couple checks and X's of like, well, this one's dipping in pretty far. This one looks fine. This one's not too bad. And then this one may be a little bit too deep. So there's like another practical example. This is like my pinhole example of like how, like why it matters that we're talking about both distance and area. If all you're looking at is the amount of area that you're fragmenting, here's an example of how you could basically fragment almost no trail at all, but still come really, really close to the sensitive area. So I just wanted to point out that this is kind of why we want to talk about both distance and area and not just one or the other. And then finally, here's another cookie example. This is specifically intended to focus on area. And, if you start chipping away at a buffer from all different sides, eventually it's going to reach a point where like, we shouldn't be chipping into it anymore. So here's an example where we have the cookie again. This in the upper left-hand corner is an existing trail. The fragmented area from the prior trail is 3%. And we're just going to say that the distance was less than 5% because that's like what we've at least done on paper right now. So this trail was approved and it's been fine. Let's say it's been in the forest for a couple of years now. People have been enjoying it. There's not been an issue with it. Now, there's been a request to put another trail in down here. The yellow, which is a little hard to see, sorry about the colors, they proposed this trail. Turns out that if you draw the line and you calculate the area that it's cutting out, that's another 3% of fragmented area from the entire original buffer. And because of that, we'll exceed the 5% amount, which means that this trail would not be approved based on what we've currently written in the deviation section. However, the green text shows you an amended trail where they basically back things up by enough to get within the like the 5%, or I'm sorry, within the 2% margin. So essentially you've got 3% area already here, and then you've got 2% over here, which means we're at 5%, which means this buffer would be at capacity after this new trail, but technically the trail could go in. So those are my 5 examples. Sorry, it's a lot. Any
Those
questions?
are excellent drawings.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's
They
really
are
helpful.
very, very helpful.
Yeah,
I can do like better, like more official drawings for like the actual management plan or rec section or whatever if we want, but I figure it's not really worth wasting my time coming up with a bunch of examples if people don't end up liking them. So I just did them on paper.
it's really clear.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Those are
general
terrific.
thoughts, and like, am I missing anything? Are there concerns? So we're gonna get into the text in a second, so I wouldn't sweat the numbers too much. Ian?
Well, the 5% is sort of an arbitrary number.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have to recognize that? I mean, is 5% a good number? Where did it come from? Or is it something we want to be able to defend?
Yeah, so I think that's a great point, and we should talk about that as soon as we get into the text, because yes, it is arbitrary, and I think we need to recognize that. And yeah, whether this is a good idea at all, or, it was sort of like a good faith effort to allow trail building without being so strict that we were going to, shut things down, which were in the margin of, error, so to speak, that like should be fine and like not harmful to the natural areas. But yeah, ultimately, we might discuss and decide, we don't really like this and we'd rather just like have strict limits. But yes, and I will point out, 5% was a figure that was used both for area and for distance, which we'll get into in a second. So we can decide, okay, well, 5% area is fine, but 5% distance is not, or vice versa. So any other comments or questions about the images specifically before we pivot over to the management plan text and kind of put this all into what it would actually look like for like sort of codifying it in the management plan? No, okay. We can always go back to them. I will bring this in. So I will address, so Brad and I met for a couple hours to talk about some of the stuff, and it was good to talk through what we basically determined. So we walked out of the last meeting and we were charged with coming up with, clear language. And there was sort of a secondary request that was mostly coming from Jim that was like, could we possibly come up with two versions? One that's sort of like scientific that has like actual figures in it. And the other one that was sort of an intent-based description of how we're trying to allow stuff, but basically sort of, I don't know, do it more by feel. Ultimately, Brad and I found it really hard to write language or to be able to really defend language that goes off of intent alone.
Are you talking deviation specifically? Or
just for deviation, yes. And so ultimately we didn't really write it out because it just didn't make sense. Like the more I don't know, I tried to write it and it just means anyone could just say like, oh, well, my intent is good, so you should let me put this trail in. And I think if we're going to consider the trail deviation process at all, we do need to have hard limits on what is allowed. So apologies for not coming up with two entirely separate replacement texts, but ultimately it was just kind of too hard to write. Does that sound consistent with what we talked about, Brad?
Yeah, no, I agree. It would just sort of be building a big loophole in, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So here is, I think the former text that was in here, I'm sorry, I didn't include it, it struck out. I can find the other version that has it, if we want to look at it, but I don't think anyone was really happy with the former text. So rather than compare it to something that was sort of like universally disliked, I just put the new text in here. I did strike out the description because that's not something we talked about, but after I looked at this again, I felt like it could be improved. So I tried to write it a little bit better. So ultimately, first I'll just call out the limitations section, which is what Brad and I specifically worked on. And then I sort of wrote this other thing like after the fact. I had sort of envisioned, I've been trying to make this stuff like easy to look at, so I don't really know if this makes more sense formatting wise. But I don't know if this all needs, it certainly doesn't all need to be bold, but I sort of envisioned it would look something like this. Where we've got, and maybe either limitations or maybe definitions would make more sense here. But to go through what we talked about, we've got the depth limit or trail encroachment. So a trail's incursion distance may not reduce the buffer width by more than 5%. Fragmentation area, the combined footprint of all trail incursions, including trail width, into a given buffer shall not exceed 5% of the total buffer area. maybe it would be improved by saying the, original. I don't know if total's needed. And then finally clustering, where deviations are considered, this is just sort of more, this is more of an intent or like feel kind of thing, and maybe it belongs, maybe it doesn't. Where deviations are considered, they should be clustered and aligned to avoid creating multiple separate buffer breaks to preserve large intact core habitat zones. So that's kind of what we came up with. I know you had mentioned 5%. We do need to address that, and whether or not we like 5%, we hate 5%, and then, yeah, and
I mean, the converse, 95% is left,
sure,
not on top, but, you know, intact.
yes.
Yeah. Well, I have views, of course. I don't have to start, but I'm happy to.
I'll start with a little thing.
Sure.
Do we need to define that this is human trail development versus forestry that has nothing to do with the forest management plan and forest and logging? Right.
Yeah, that's a great question. Maybe we could fix that by just in the opening saying, which we haven't read yet, but adjustments to recreational trails. Perfect. You know, so.
And the easement addresses that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, but you could be confused. I see what you mean. You might add a little extra saying that anything regarding,
Please see forestry section.
Right.
Management plan for forestry.
yeah, so
Something.
for,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's all I had.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Any other thoughts?
Well, look, so, I mean, you guys know that I think that this buffer zone is disproportionately large to the area that we're talking about. It's not an enormous area. It's a relatively small forest, 450 acres. And so I think if you're gonna err on the big side of the zones and influence, then I think you need to be a little bit more permissive with the variances of the trail allowances. So I think you can be stricter and less tolerant of occurrences if you're gonna have smaller buffer zones. And I think as the buffer zone gets bigger, then I think the trade-off is that you need to tolerate more variance. Because I think when we put those big buffers in to 300 feet or 100 meters in that map, it's gonna be pretty red or pink or whatever color you like. And so the signal that we're gonna send, and I know this isn't what we intend, but I think the signal that will be received, even though it's not the message that we're trying to send, is that the forest is closed and that you can't have any trails in the forest. Now, it doesn't mean that the buffers aren't important. I just think that if you're gonna go with buffers that big, you're gonna have to have some more flexibility on the encroachment and the variance stuff. So I think, you know, something more like 25% is more reasonable.
Oh,
Because there's no way you're gonna be able to trace that line. I mean, I really like those pictures that you did, Sam. I thought they were really illustrated. But there's no way you're gonna be able to dodge and weave through the different sensitive areas because there's just not gonna be any room. So
5% a
because
lot.
why?
it's only a lot relative, I mean.
It's a quarter of what we're
It's a lot
saving.
depending on what those buffers end up looking like. So
Fair.
if the whole forest ends up buffered, then 25% is not a lot. But if we have tight buffers, then yeah, 25% is a lot. I agree with you there. Sorry, Brad, I'm sure you have thoughts on that, but Sonia, did you wanna finish?
Well, do you have that map that you had that showed all the layers with the
Sure.
buffer to see if
And it seems that map number 2 would be demonstrating that would show, you know, for the whole area of the forest of 400 and some acres, how much of that area is protected. We could calculate that because the map, this QGIS package will tell you the area of
Yeah.
the feature.
It could be this is
You
really
just
near
said-
the road.
Exactly.
Mhm.
We talk about this and we figure out, we sort of pencil in our figures. And then we, next meeting, we look at the map with the buffers.
Yeah.
And then we're looking at them both together, we're looking at the text.
Yeah.
That is, back based on science, and then we're talking about the trail deviation, and we're looking at the map with the buffers, and then we kind of see the whole picture, okay, like, here's what we wrote down.
Yeah.
Which is what seems to be the responsible approach based on the science that we're aware of, here's what that looks like in reality on a map. And that will, I think, give us a better, more perspective into, whether or not this is reasonable.
Yeah.
And whether or not we want to, what that means, if that means like we're back to discussing buffers, or if we're discussing these like 5% numbers in the deviation section, or what.
Yeah. Yep. I would agree to that. I think we should look at it with the map in full proportion, or as close to proportion as we can, and see what it means.
Yeah.
And check it out. Yeah. And I would also just point out that it's not that the science says these are the buffers that we should put in. It's that's the buffers that we put in are relative to the objectives that we set for ourselves for the forest. So if we want to say, no incursions in any manner should occur to the maximum scientific caution, that's one objective. If we want to say we have to make some trade-offs and we have to balance the different objectives between recreation and say no disturbance, that's another one. To say that there's going to be that animals will never perceive our presence in the forest is I don't think a reasonable objective to fit all the stuff in there. We don't have to go over all that stuff. We don't have to rehash it all. I just want to push back on the notion that this is what science tells us what to do, because I don't think that it does. I think our management objectives put us in a tension that don't let science solve all the problems. And if we did do a tight reading of that document, and I think we should, then we should come back to and then we have to revisit the part about bikes versus not bikes, because if we're looking at the Naughton report, and if you want to live and die by that report, she clearly says that going through a place faster than slower is better for the animals, and so walking.
And then what does Julian, what does she say after that? She qualifies that.
She's got a bunch of different sections.
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
You can cover far more territory on a bike. The net result of that is what you want to look at. The fact that somebody can zip through something, right? They can go a mile in 2 minutes, versus somebody's going to take them a long time to go a mile. That person, the other person, the guy on the bike, is going to cover more territory. And the net result of how many critters he disturbs could still be greater. And that's what she puts right after she puts that point that everybody is jumping on. But no one's talking about the second
I don't
point
agree with
where
that interpretation. No, I don't think.
Well,
that's true,
then argue with her. Then argue with her. I know you don't agree with any of these.
And then second of all,
I was trying to talk there, but go ahead.
pardon?
I was talking, and I'm trying.
I think we have a delay. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You
Brad,
don't.
no one interrupted you. There's a delay.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I did interrupt. I'm sorry. Well, go ahead.
Well,
And there's a
whatever.
delay, which makes it.
No, what-
Sorry. I'm going to keep my mouth shut until you're done, Brad. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm sorry. All right. No, but whatever. I mean, one thing you were talking about, the whole forest is going to be closed. Watch out for those simplistic statements, because it's not. You talk about the objective. If our objective is this or that, our objective basically goes back to the easement that says we have to protect that stuff. We also have to provide recreation, but we don't have to unprotect that stuff to provide recreation. And I think what we've got here is a way that might very well solve that problem and do those two contradictory things in a balanced manner. I totally agree with what you said. At some point we've got to plug in the real numbers into that buffer map and look at those. Look at the map in the right scale and figure it out from there. But we aren't trying to shut that forest down. I mean, read the plan. It's in there. That is not the thing. The deal on these variances is just to, give a little wiggle room, but not a lot, to, shut down everything we've gained, to expose all these sensitive areas to more people. And to say, and we aren't also saying that critters aren't going to detect us beyond that or within that. What were you saying? Beyond that 300, that at 300 feet, they won't see us. Read the science. Some of them will. That 300 is a fraction of what if you want to look at every critter, right? Take the spookiest thing out there. You need more than that. But the 300 is sort of a nice,
Hey, Brad.
healthy range to that we could work with. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sam, you called me?
Hey, Brad, can you hear me?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Our connection is pretty bad. It's gone from bad to worse. Before you were delayed of getting a stutter and we dropped the meeting and then just came back in after being out for 10 seconds. So we can't really hear what you're saying at this point. I don't know what this means for the recording or if you're going to be able to continue to hear us. Maybe it would be helpful if I stopped sharing the screen, if we're, or we went off video or something. I'm not really sure, but I just wanted to point that out because, yeah, we caught some of it, but we missed a lot of it, and I think just because of the way that the Zoom is not quite working.
If we have a bandwidth problem, then taking it and stops sharing might well help, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure if everyone has a copy of, well, I guess you could look on with me. If everyone else has a copy of
That's fine.
what's it, I'm not sure, but
If I could,
go ahead.
after Brad, could I make a point? I don't know if Brad's.
Yeah, Brad, I mean, I see Brad on video.
I can hear fine.
Okay, so you haven't had any trouble hearing us?
I heard a little tiny stutter in that last little piece you were saying, but nothing bad.
Okay, well, maybe, hopefully we're past the technical issues.
Yeah. Okay.
Less than him.
Yeah,
So,
go ahead, Ian.
if I could comment, I mean, I think this conversation is sort of building on my concern about, because I think what Brad is showing is that, or explaining is that a trail that occupies 5% of something, if nobody is traveling on that trail, then there's no impact once the trail is in place. But then the amount of traffic has actually becomes the impact. So I don't know how we really can handle that in these guidelines, but at least it seems that this point that's being raised by Brad and discussed is something which should be included as sort of a proviso on this guideline.
That's a good point. I mean, I think
Yeah.
points well taken on both sides, from both Brad and Julian, in that a bike very well may cause less disturbance if it zooms past an animal because it's quick. But if that biker is covering 5 times the distance in the forest because they're on a bike, then maybe there is overall more impact to wildlife. It's hard to know. We're trying to use the science as best as we can. I think it's worth considering both things, right? That a single instance of a wildlife and a bike might be less of an impact than someone who's standing there bird watching. That might be more destructive to the wildlife. But if the bird watcher goes a mile and the biker goes 5 miles, what is the overall impact? I don't know.
I suppose that's the intent of trail closures. So if you close a trail and there are no humans on it, therefore those humans that aren't there are not having an impact.
Yeah, and to address what Julian had said about we did set management goals and the buffers are associated with us basically trying to determine for each of these sensitive areas, what are we trying to protect and what is, flight distance of the animals that we're trying to protect, which is kind of how we arrived at those buffer amounts. I guess I just wanted to address that is like why we ended up with the buffers they are.
Yeah.
My intent was not to say that, I guess my intent was to say the buffers we put in the section above here are us making our best effort to adhere to science in drawing the buffers, whereas this is just fully arbitrary, right? And that's kind of what I was trying to call out. So my apologies if I kind of
Well, but
So
I mean,
it's sensitive.
I just want to point out that the science is general. It doesn't apply to the dangerous forest in a one-to-one manner. And so again, I think it's a question of proportion. I don't know at what scale it makes sense to use these buffers. I'm sure that the animals are sensitive in the way that she suggests in 300 feet, but in the scale of a 450-acre forest, we may have to tolerate that some disturbance of the animals that is different than saying we're not going to protect them. So what I would say is that 300-foot buffer is well and good as a target, and I would say that it doesn't mean if we go incur into that 300-foot buffer that we're not protecting animals. We're still protecting them. It just means that we have to tolerate the overlapping goals that we have. And I do think that it's pretty clear that in that page, which is page 25 in the Naughton report. It's clear, she says that it's pretty clear that motorized recreation has less impact than motorized, or motorized has less impact than non-motorized, which is counterintuitive. You wouldn't think so, right? But
Because they can hear it coming.
but it has less an impact, which is the confusing part. I think it's because they go through more quickly.
Oh, no, I think they can hear it.
And hide.
They can
And
hear
you're
it,
We got away, but
they get out of the way.
okay.
Right, and their evolution never built automobiles or ATVs into their psyche.
Right.
So I watched the log skid, our logger, they'll skid right by 2 or 3 deer.
Yeah.
Cause that isn't in there.
Oh, I see. It's
Yeah.
so loud that it doesn't compute, and so
It
they
doesn't compute as danger,
Whereas
you
walking-
and I walking by computes as
I see.
Predator.
danger.
Well, that makes sense. And then, yeah, so for whatever reason, the motorized stuff, now we're not allowing motorized vehicles in there, so
Right.
that's kind of a non-thing, but the authors find various speeds of walking and found a greater negative effect from slower movement. Another article compared walking swinging arms to walking without swinging arms, and you react more strongly to swinging arms. Makes sense. And she says, I estimate the effect of biking and skiing to be less negative than walking and more negative than OHVs. I don't know what an OHV is. It's some sort of vehicle.
Off
What's the H?
highway vehicle.
Off highway, I think.
Okay.
So ATVs.
Okay, yeah. And then, yeah, the very last sentence on that paragraph, we found similar contrasting effects between foot travel and mountain biking, but they do note that mountain biking often covers more ground than foot travel and thus may accumulate a greater effect. So again, it's pretty ambiguous. I don't think that there's enough evidence here to ban biking over walking. And if you're okay with the effects from walking, especially slow walking, then I think that it's very difficult to justify banning biking based on what's in this report. And if we're gonna, stick this report because you think this is the absolute science that applies to our forest, then I don't see how you can justify that.
Because
So-
she synthesized all that, Julian, and came up with 300 feet. That's part of her report. I mean, that's that's an element of it, but if we're going to protect stuff, I mean, what is the need? I mean, why should we even be, I don't know. I guess I don't understand why we have to subjugate the wildlife to recreation to this degree. I mean, we're trying to add some flexibility. Our 300 feet is already 25% less than what New Hampshire has on their guidelines. We've already cut it, and we've compromised on compromises, and now we're
There's no
trying to
compromises.
compromise on What?
That's not a compromise. No one. I mean,
No,
I don't see that. I don't see that as a compromise, but that's fine. We don't have to debate that.
Yeah, I think that, I don't know, just sort of like listening to, I know we've come back to this a few times at a few different meetings, and, as it stands, we currently have, no dogs, no bikes, in the northern section of the forest. I do think in listening to this, the 300-foot value, or 330-foot, or the 400-foot, or whatever value is taking all user types into account, correct? So,
yeah, I would think.
so I guess, I don't know, in thinking about this, as we've, sort of been able to digest this and go through sections, and I am wondering that if we are using, like, it would make more sense for us to ban, you know, or it's not really a ban, you know, it's a moratorium, you know, as it currently stands, because we talked about revisiting, if we were using a tight buffer, it would make more sense to say, okay, well, we're not gonna do bikes and dogs because we chose a smaller buffer. But because we're using the full buffers and hopefully not digging into them too much with the deviation, it does kind of, I don't know, it does seem like the bike dog thing becomes a little bit more arbitrary. I will also say, just as a matter of, well, I would love to see us protect the forest as much as possible. You know, I have been trying to get a read on, you know, general, you know, public consensus on some of this stuff. I don't expect that point to be very popular. You know, I've gotten emails from people specifically about like the dogs and bikes thing, and this is going to go to RTC, RCC, the select board, and then to the public. We're gonna get a lot of comments. So I don't know, you know, whether or not we want to relitigate that, you know, today or in a future meeting or after we get our public feedback. I have no doubt that we will be talking about that single point in the recreation section again in the future, which was, what are we doing about what dogs and bikes? I think that's gonna come back up one way or the other, so I figured I would just throw that out there just so everyone's thinking about it, because like, we certainly haven't, I don't know if we're gonna figure that out today. I think we should focus on the deviation stuff for now, with that in mind, because it is good to have that context on, you know, what are we doing, what the, you know, different traffic types.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it should be top of mind because like we're gonna talk about it some more, whether we like it or not. And I know that we sort of made the proposal and we voted on it so we could move on. So I think for now, we should continue to move on. Maybe once we finish this section or even finish like the whole plan, then that's the last thing we do is go back to like the last few points that are the most contentious.
Yep.
And we kind of look at the full picture, you know, with the entire trail section, with all the buffers, with the maps, and we basically decide, does this all look good? And maybe we feel differently about it then. I think that if we have that same discussion now, or maybe even next meeting, we might just arrive at the same conclusion, which seems like kind of a waste of time. Not that I don't think that we shouldn't address it if we think it's gonna be a problem, but I also want to be sensitive of the fact that, you know, the entire management plan revision process has taken us much longer than we would have liked it to. And it would be really nice, especially once we get through this section, we're so close to being really at the end of the process. So if we could just keep pressing forward and then maybe touch on it, you know, at the end, maybe before public feedback, but during the same time that RCC, RTC, and the select board are getting their like first view of it.
Yeah.
Then that's when we're, you know, going to talk about that again,
Yeah.
because I'm sure we're gonna get comments about it. So, yeah.
Well, we have had sections of this draft that address monitoring
Yes.
and monitoring in terms of trying to determine the impact that human activity is having. In addition to just the simple parameter or the easy to obtain parameter, which is the number of people using the trail and perhaps the means of transport, you know, recognizing that bicycles go further, people on bicycles go further than people walking, they go further than people bird watching, but you know, those are all very difficult things to quantify. But this is actually a naive question. Do we still have a section on monitoring? I know it was written, it was appearing in drafts. I haven't seen it recently, but it just seems pertinent to this discussion. You know, there's more to the impact issue than the presence of a trail. There's also the volume of traffic on the trail. You know, it's getting crazy.
That's a great question. I don't know, because I know we had a wildlife stewardship. There was a point in time before I was even on this committee. I'll let you talk just a sec, Brad, I see your hand. Where Chase, Brad, and myself were looking at wildlife stewardship, but that wasn't necessarily, it included elements of monitoring, but I don't think there was a dedicated monitoring plan. I know we discussed, and I discussed like interest in having there be like a
Yeah,
monitoring
we
plan.
talked about it for a while. I distinctly remember talking about monitoring for quite a while.
I might proceed my time. Brad, that seems like maybe you have some context.
Yeah, I think what we ended up doing, there is something in the wildlife stewardship plan that is, we haven't looked at in a long time. But for monitoring, I think we agreed to put something in, probably ecology, that says something like, we will develop a monitoring plan and within 3 months after the approval of this, or something like that. That was the idea. It was kind of, like a gentle kick down the road, kicking the can down the road a little bit.
Yeah, I think that it makes sense for it to be separate from the management plan in that there's some moving parts there. Like, do we spend ACF money? Can we get RCC funds? What does it look like? There's a lot of stuff that and also
Yeah,
might change,
there
and it
is.
doesn't really, the monitoring doesn't necessarily have an effect on the rest of the management plan. It will if like we decide that like the trails are being super disruptive, but we even decided that the actual sort of like trail map and the trail moves, trail rules or forest rules maybe also need to live outside of the management plan. So I was thinking about this the other day, and I think it's important. I would love to see us come up with a monitoring plan that actually probably costs a few $1,000s and we get, equipment and we figure out how to do it professionally. However, I don't think we should have the entire management plan hinge on it. I think we can develop it.
This was a section on monitoring and methodologies, and it referenced the Heinsberg Town Forest, which did some extensive, they hired people to do monitoring.
Yeah.
They had people at the parking areas counting trail users. There's also, I remember there was some information about how to do point sampling counts and extrapolate. If you spend 5 minutes watching a trail and you see 2 people using at a certain time of day, at a certain time of year, you can then extrapolate using established relationships to how many people would be using that on an annual basis. Well, there was that methodology was there, and it was referenced. The sources were referenced. So maybe that's another thing I should put on my homework list, which is to go hunting for that, see if it still exists, the monitoring. I mean, I recognize you that you don't want to get into details now. I think it's important that we know whether that material still exists and where it is.
I imagine it exists somewhere, at least in the public record, hopefully, or maybe,
I'll
if
look
somebody
for
has it on the first team.
it.
We should dig that up and talk about it. Brad, I see your hand.
Yeah, just quickly, the UVM Field Naturalist report has a big monitoring section at the end where they propose a way we might do it. And also the, I think it's called the Forest Ecology Monitoring Cooperative, maybe FEMC at UVM. They've got a web page they go into it and they get into the technology of it, which is kind of cool. But
okay, so next step
anyway, there are Ian, let me know and I can tip you off.
So my thought was, Ian, if you want to dig a little bit and see, because I think when we were last talking about the monitoring as a committee, you were the chair, so you hopefully have that in your record somewhere. So maybe you just go digging for it, and then I don't know, we can put it on our next agenda as something to discuss, like where we're at and like what the plan is for where it belongs in the management plan.
I will look for it and report back.
And then because we have at least a few more meetings before we're going to be wrapping up the management plan, I think that next time. So in the meantime, look for that. We'll put a little time on the agenda next time to look at what we have and then discuss on what our next steps are. My thought is after that, maybe there's a working group of some kind, whether that's you and Brad or you, me and Brad, or some group of people that basically cleans that section up and then brings it back to the group. That's worked really well for us. And I think we can't at this point really try to look at anything altogether. Like this full committee time is really, best for us going through a document and saying, yes, we like this, no, we don't like this, basically approving some of everything.
No, it's there somewhere.
I'm sure.
Find out where it is.
I'm sure it's there.
I'm
positive we talked about that.
So to bring it back full circle.
Yeah.
how did we get started on talking about the monitoring? I think it was a comment you made, Julian.
I think probably he was bringing it up because ultimately what we want to know is, are we having any impact? I mean, what we're disputing fundamentally is how much impact negatively we're gonna have on the forest. I don't think we're gonna have much. Brad's very worried about it. I totally respect that. And I think the one of the ways out that you're suggesting is let's measure what impact we're having. And I think we all agree that that's a good idea.
So I think that's a
The-
good
the-
thing long term, right? But like that's not gonna help us now.
No, but for now, there's two things. So I really like Sonia's idea. Let's get the real buffer zones on the map per Ian's layers. Let's look at it. Let's see. I mean, I think it's gonna look like such a big fat marshmallow that we're not gonna be able to thread it anywhere in there. In which case, whatever our intent is, Brad, I think people are gonna react negatively to a completely red forest map. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Let's look at the map.
It's
Okay?
it's not
And
gonna
then we
be-
can- I'm not done. So let's look at the map based on the actual boundaries. And then
Sure.
let's discuss then, based on those boundaries, what makes sense. It's still arbitrary, but maybe it gives us a basis on which to think, what kind of exceptions do we need? Do we need 5% or do we need 25%? And then I have one other thing to say, but go ahead, Brad.
No, go ahead. I'm fine.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
fine.
And so that's on the boundaries and the incursion section. And then, yeah, we did vote on the bikes versus and dogs and stuff. But we did it with the assumption that Norton says that bikes are bad and people are good. And I don't think that's actually what she says. In fact, the only time she ever speaks in the first person in this document, she says, I estimate the effect of biking and skiing to be less negative than walking and more negative than LHVs. It's true that at the end of that paragraph, she qualifies that with what you're saying, Brad, that bikes cover more distance and so therefore might have more of an impact. My point is though, based on the ambiguity there, I think when we come back to revisit that, and we don't have to litigate this now, but I do think that there is not really justification in this document to exclude any particular kind of recreation. If we're okay with any kind of trail up there, then I think we're okay with any of the uses that we're discussing. And we don't have to litigate that. You can say, you guys get the last word. That's all I'm gonna say. I don't want to need to say anything else, but I do think when we come back to that, we need to really consider what the basis of excluding bikes is from them.
So I will push back just because it just occurred.
Okay,
So I think we make the assumption that if you're on a mountain bike, everybody goes the same speed because it's aisle and it's flat. Well, the bikes going uphill are gonna go very slowly.
Yes.
Relatively slowly.
Yes.
So in theory, there's a greater impact.
good question.
Yep, and then they're coming downhill, they're gonna go fast, and in theory, there may be less impact. So we need to be mindful of that.
Yeah, well, that's fair.
Think about that.
That's a fair point. Yep.
Brad,
And I think Ian referred to this earlier. It's the volume of traffic too. You know, I mean,
Yes.
what
Yes.
is the volume going to be with the bikes, especially with e-bikes, which are exploding? And, you know,
Yeah.
almost anybody can go anywhere farther than before. What's
Yeah,
that going to
yeah.
do to it, you know, than walker? You might have one walker might have more effect, but there's only a walker on that trail every 4 days. And yet there's 4 bikers each day on that trail or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you know what
No,
I
no,
mean?
I think volume is
Volume.
absolutely right. I'm sorry, Brad. That's what I keep thinking.
No, you're right. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I completely agree with you on volume, absolutely. And I think the other thing I want to say is that when Jim was talking about, I wasn't here, so I don't know what he meant about let's feel it out instead of put numbers on. I get the discomfort with numbers because it's nature and nature adapts, and this whole thing is estimatory anyway, so the numbers are tricky. I totally get the point about, okay, but what do we mean? What is an exception without being a huge loophole if we don't put any numbers on there? But remember a couple of meetings ago, I said that Meredith Naughton, she doesn't just talk about zones of influence. She has 6 factors or 7 factors that she talks about. You know, consolidation zone, breeding seasons, trail use volume, to your point, Brad, recreation activity type and taxonomic group, which means which animals are going to be affected by what things. So one way to maybe have our cake and eat it too is to make numbers where we think they make sense. So for on the incursion bit, for example, but then to Jim's point, it may make sense to say, okay, well, ZOI is just one. What if somebody else comes up with something that says, look, we're navigating, we're gonna set really tight dates on the breeding seasons. We're gonna limit trail user volume by, I don't know, some magical method that doesn't yet exist. But I guess what I'm saying is if the intent is not just, I really mean it, but it is actually within the boundaries of the categories of the document, which are again, these 6 categories, then I think, that's probably a way to sort of, give a little discretion without putting numbers on them. Just to Jim's point, and still abide by the science and still be guided by the narrative, not document. So, for example, I might say, okay, I may be violating the zone of influence here and there. Okay, but look at these other 5 things that Meredith Mountain points out as being important. We're finding ways to bring those into this trail proposal. And in that way, and I think that reflects probably more the true nature of the Naughton thing, which is that it's not just one factor, it's a bunch of factors and it's complex. And so what am I saying in the end here?
Let's look at the map.
I'm saying, let's look at the map. I'm saying, let's put numbers where we can and let's put in a clause that says, if you want to justify some variance, justify it according to the 6 categories that that's in the doc. Yeah, how about that? That's a technical version of what I was trying to say.
Do we want to pull, are there actually 6 points, or is that just an example?
No, there's
Do we want to-
consolidation zones, so consolidation of trails.
Yeah.
Right, so
Yeah.
as few trails as possible, taking advantage of existing trails. Maybe there's a piece of an existing trail that's in a sensitive zone, but it's an existing trail. I don't know.
Sure, vast, right next to the wetland, is a great example.
There we go.
In the wetlands.
In the wetland, right. Maybe that's not a good example, but all those forest roads might be an example where
Yeah.
you're crisscrossing. Something.
Yeah,
The breeding seasons, we're not hitting bobcats, we're not hitting deer, we're not hitting turkeys, we're not hitting whatever. Okay, bears, they're right in the middle of July. Okay, well,
But,
something like that. So I'm
But
just
what would
giving
hit- but what would hitting be? So you
Pardon?
would then, what would, quote, hitting a bobcat during breeding season be?
I
How
think-
would you avoid that? How would you know how far away to go?
well, I think what Julian was saying is that if we were using all 6 of those points, so if we were closing a trail, like let's say you have a trail that goes by like a talus slope, but it was always closed during bobcat breeding season, then the whole reason why we buffered the talus is because it needs to be protected during the denning season. But if it was never used, aside from non-denning season, then technically, like you could loosen up on the buffer or mass stand for bear or deer or whatever. Like if we're just trying to protect the acorns during acorn season, then maybe a trail is closed then, but then the rest of the year, we've talked about hemlock, closing hemlock during the winter because that's when turkey and deer are using it, but then the rest of the year, maybe it's fine. So I think the point was, if we get more specific with certain things like timing, and we're looking at those other things that Meredith points out, that maybe it would allow, rather than just draw the 300 foot, because that's basically what we're doing, because we haven't been drilling down into every last detail for every single zone.
Yeah.
And so what we kind of attempt to do with like the wetland and seepy stuff in the spring, it's like, we're just gonna close these for a couple months in the spring.
Right.
I think Julian's point was, if we really get things dialed in, there may be a point where we could, safely, once we've got monitoring in place, we could maybe even safely reduce those buffers and realize like, oh, well, as long as we close this trail for these 3 months out of the year, it's actually fine if people use it during other seasons. Like, I don't think they're there yet. I think it's gonna take time.
Yeah.
And it's like, maybe it'll never happen, but it sounded like that's the.
That's
point
right,
we're
that's
trying
right.
to
So you
make.
start with 300 because it's easy and it's flat and it's measurable, whatever. But then if somebody comes up with some sophisticated proposal that takes into account the other 5 and says, okay, I do need to cut in here, but look, I'm looking at the whole document, I'm looking at all the science, and here's what I think it makes sense. The committee doesn't have to say yes, it's just a reasonable grounds on which to argue a proposal, I would say.
Because we're in the
Right, well-
trail deviation review process.
Yeah.
Right.
And we've been looking at proposed trails incursions into buffer zones, either by area or by incursion distance.
Yep.
But the discussion seems to widen way
It has.
beyond that.
Yeah.
No, so are we saying that we want to continue working on the trail deviation review process to address some of these, really complex issues that are being raised?
But I don't think it's widened. I think so. So I think it's like if somebody came to you and said, okay, yeah, I want a trail deviation. I'm gonna hit 25% of this one buffer zone. And you'd be like, sorry, no can do. It's over our agreed number, whatever the number that we end up with. And then I think what I would like to see language there is like, okay, if you're gonna propose that, show me then how you're gonna mitigate that with the other categories of the document. There's not, I don't think, and I might be wrong here, but I'd love to look at this, and I know you will and I will too, but I'm not sure that the zone of influence has any more priority than consolidation or breeding seasons or trail use volume. So like, but in our management plan, that is the one that we're predominantly using. So I think it would make sense in the deviation section to say, if you're gonna incur over whatever the deviation limit is, or to the deviation limit, then also, figure out how you're gonna justify to us that you're doing well on these other 5 management consideration categories that she puts in. And
Yeah, so that's why that relates to this, because
yes,
if somebody was saying, hey, I want to put this trail in, I know that it cuts in by 25%, but it's gonna be closed half the year.
right,
Then it becomes sort of a different discussion, because it's like, oh, well,
exactly,
this is right through a hemlock forest, but it's, or it's like right through the hemlock buffer, but it's only gonna be open during the summer. So is it
Yeah.
going to matter? It's like, that's a good question and not something that's addressed, right?
Could you take what you just said?
Yeah.
With the 6 and make a paragraph out of it for us?
yes, I could,
I think that would be very helpful, because it does bring up a good point in this whole section that
Right.
we're not talking about trail closures, we're not talking about these other things that could very well affect why you might want to consider a trail that deviates from that strict 300-foot buffer.
yeah,
Other considerations
Yeah,
seems to be, I mean, we've got headings for different aspects of this trail incursions.
yeah,
Paragraph on other considerations, but things like traffic and seasonal variations and closures and all those others that have just been raised.
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah, I will write that paragraph. Let's come back next week, look at the map. And, yeah,
Go from there.
cool, so so just so we can get some of this stuff hammered out while we're still in this section, can we, since we have a few minutes, before we're on time, because I think I need to get my agenda. So
It's 8:30, but
oh, here's the card. Yeah, well, yeah, we just do this until closure. Yeah, so we still have 20 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we got 20 minutes that we can use. Can we just look at a couple things? So first, what I struck out and replaced it with. So before it read, this process provides a structured way to identify and evaluate minor deviations from the trail development parameters. We replaced it with, this process allows for limited and carefully considered adjustments to recreational trails adjacent to sensitive natural areas. Deviations may be used to address site-specific safety or terrain challenges and are intended to be minor, purposeful, and protective of core habitats.
Yep.
Does everyone like that?
sure.
I just think it's a little bit more descriptive and kind of helps define the purpose, more than the generic version. So unless anyone has any issues with that, I'm just gonna go ahead and bring in black. And then do people, I know we kind of, I showed the pictures, we kind of read through the text, and then we got into some pretty deep discussion. Do we like, I don't even know if I like them, like the terminology, if I go back to my cookie example with all the terminology, let me get this. Do we like terms like, fragmented area, an incursion distance, or are there better terms? Because these are just names that made sense to me, but I also don't know if does incursion sound too harsh? Like, I don't know. Like, are there any opinions one way or the other here? Do people like it? Would people like to see any of this terminology change? Because I think that now's the time for us to lock in what we want to call these things. And I think some of them are simple, right? Sensitive area, buffer zone, buffer width. We've kind of already covered all that. But,
They're descriptive.
Yeah.
They're good.
okay, so fragmented area.
incursion is a little bellicose, but I think it's accurate.
Okay,
I mean, fragmentation from like war terminology.
yeah.
It's clear what you mean.
Well, encroachment would could work too.
Encroachment might be better, yeah.
Yep.
I think encroachment is probably more appropriate.
I'm slow on the uptake, but just so we don't get farther away from it, the paragraph that you just turned black.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Are intended to, can we just change that to either, should be or will be?
Okay, yeah, should be.
Will be. but-
Should be minor, purposeful, and protective of core habitats. Yeah, I wrote that. Thank you. All of your comments on the spelling and the grammar and it's like the wording has always been spot on, so please keep giving it. Yeah, so maybe, we want to use encroachment instead of, incursion. And I guess encroachment is here, so. Basically, we changed this from incursion to encroachment. And. Distance may not reduce the buffer width by more than, we'll just ignore the number for the moment. So that makes sense to people, right?
Mhm.
Trails encroachment distance may not, and we are gonna, I will put more polish on these diagrams and we can put them in this section so people can see. At least with the one that has the cookie example, I think is very clear on, this is what the terminology is.
Right.
Just so people can see on like an actual diagram. This is
Yeah.
what,
Yeah, it's just what.
In the drawing, it's clear, but I think what you mean is by buffer width is actually like may not.
so here's the picture again.
No, but in the text, it doesn't quote.
So, yeah, reduces the buffer, so we have buffer width, which is just, this is 300 feet, let's say.
Yeah,
So you don't want to reduce that 300 by more than 5%, ignore the number, right? So,
no,
because,
I just think it's not
15.
quite right.
So maybe the fragmentation, is that zone?
fragmented area.
Is it? It's being removed from the buffer, right?
Yeah, so right now we're talking about the first point, which is the distance, and we'll get to area in a second.
Right.
So we're talking distance, and we're trying to describe, I'll get back to the example just because it's easier to look at this. And we're trying to describe this little red bar here, which is so we've got buffer width, which is from a sensitive area to the outside of the buffer, and then we've got a trail that's encroaching on a buffer. And so, yeah, what it says is that we don't want to reduce the buffer width by more than 5%. So this is 100% buffer width, then 100% minus 5 would be.
Just think, and help me, I'm not passionate about this, I just think that for clarity. But buffer width sort of implies like the whole of the buffer width, and that's not really what we're talking about, we're talking a piece. And it feels like you're saying cannot,
So it's the distance from the outer buffer
yeah,
to the core,
I
to
think-
the,
Radius.
to the protected area.
exactly, yeah. You see what I mean, like it's just a little more precise, and I think.
Yeah, so maybe we just clarify here, sorry. Like it's getting off center because of the going back and forth between the picture.
Am I the only one who thinks it's not quite right? 'Cause on the picture it's totally clear, and then I see it in text and I think, yeah,
Of the buffer.
oh, the sensitive. No. Oh, is it? Oh, yes.
And you are gonna make a diagram that. You're gonna clean up your.
I'll clean up the diagram and I will do my best to make it to scale, so that if we have so we can actually see. I mean, I guess I won't do it to scale yet, because like, it sounds like we're gonna talk about the scale, but.
I don't think you ever have to make it scale. I think it's super illustrated. I think it's super clear the way you had.
Okay. Yeah, and if we go with such a small number, that it's gonna be hard to even draw, which might actually prove a point that maybe it's.
So with the
silly to even consider this in the first place. Okay, so we all like that.
Yep.
Like we like this as is.
Yep.
Because what I could also do is just start by saying like buffer width, and then we could go to, I don't think we need depth limit. I think it just be trail encroachment. Just place there. Because yeah, the other option would just to say like this buffer width and like define it and then move on. But it's only, I feel like it's only applicable to this first point, so maybe it is fine, lumped into it. So second, we have fragmentation area. So the combined footprint, or I guess, yeah, I don't know. Area maybe would be better here. The combined footprint of all trail encroachments, including trail width, into a given buffer shall not exceed 5% of the total, or the original total buffered area.
Yeah, of that,
Would it be better?
that, totally buffered area.
Might it be better to say the combined buffer loss? Because the footprint of the trail encroachment, like Julian was saying before,
Oh,
people may
yeah.
think of the width of the trail itself.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
The combined buffer loss.
Yeah. The combined buffer area
Yeah.
lost.
Hmm.
Yeah, good point.
How do I go from here though?
Impacted rather
The
than
trail encroachment,
Shall not exceed, all the way to shall not exceed.
To
the proposed.
because what I want to say, what I want to make sure is like that last example where you had like
You got
trail one and then you've got trail two, like you need to look at all of them for a single buffer. Because otherwise you could just continue to chip away at a buffer until you have nothing left. Because it'd be like, oh, well, this is a new trail, so we can
Okay.
reset for 5%.
So how about due to the, I'm sorry, the existing and proposed trail encroachments?
Right, proposed trail encroachments, right?
But, yeah, go ahead.
I'll raise you one. I'll take that and I'll raise you a hand. Take the entire phrase from area loss due to all the way to encroachments and just say encroachments.
Okay, the entire buffer.
That's right.
And
Encroachments.
Well, proposed encroachments though, right?
Right.
Well, but it's
Portion of the-
existing and proposed. Because you may have you
How
already.
about
got an-
total?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I see,
here,
right.
Well, maybe
This is what we're thinking.
That might make sense, right, because the last proposal came
Yeah,
through. when
you had a
I had
proposal,
one,
and you were successful, now I have a proposal.
Right, right,
And we're chewing away at this.
that's right, I think you should probably put existing in proposed. Cause total might be construed as just what's in the proposal.
Okay.
Right.
so the combined buffer, the combined buffer encroachments,
Existing and proposed.
which is
encroachments.
buffer, which is trail length multiplied by trail width. That's the area.
It's true, it's true. Well,
No, it's not.
No, it's not. Yeah.
It's not. Because it's gonna depend on the buffer, depending on the shape of the thing that's being buffered, that's gonna change the shape of the buffer zone. Like if you have an egg versus you have a circle or versus you have a log, that's going to change the way that the buffer looks. So if you're cutting off the edge of the cookie versus you're, going along, side of a straight wildlife corridor, those are going to be different calculations. So it's not just trail width by trail length. That's going to give you the total area of the trail itself, but not the fragmented area. We're looking at the fragmented area, which is the trail length times trail width plus whatever.
Fragmented area is different from trail area.
Mm-hmm.
So a combined.
I got it now.
Yeah, combined buffer encroachment. Alright, I just need to start over. The total. Alright, the combined total of all trail encroachments on a
Buffer zone.
yeah. Buffer zone. Should or may not exceed. Yeah. Okay,
Base students.
shall not exceed, Yeah, 5% of that original. I don't think original total was necessary, right? Original buffered area.
Sure.
Yeah, so the combined total of all trail encroachments. So then we
Total.
say this includes.
Total area? Do you have to say?
Trail width. By trail length
Oh, man.
and the, I don't know, I want to call it orphaned.
Loss.
like-
And this is, I mean, this is, I think, clear, it's clearer to me on the picture.
It is much clearer in the
I
picture.
mean, the
Yeah.
terminology one shows it pretty clearly, and then the example, the last figure, I think it is. Yeah, the last of your figures is showing an encroachment, a fragmented area of
Fragmented.
6%. I mean, it could be shaded in maybe and use shading to.
Yeah,
So it's that area.
I think it goes to show that this diagram is very helpful, like number 5
Yeah.
is helpful. I don't think number 4 is necessary for the final management plan. I just wanted that as a visual aid.
The first one and the fourth one and
I
I
think
think
that's-
one are the key.
I think that, yeah, that's all we need is number 1 and number 5, right?
Yeah.
Like these other ones are nice, but they're not really that, helpful. I mean, they're fine, but for helping us make the decision. But, yeah,
I'll go in the management plan, the first and the fifth one would be really helpful.
yeah. Mm,
I mean, I like pictures more than words. I think most of this.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, I'm
that
just talking
could-
about they are on the right parent here. I thought this makes sense. Is this close? Is this, sure. So the combined total of all trail encroachments on a buffer zone shall not exceed 5% of that original buffered area. This includes trail width by, should I say, times? Or should just like, this includes trail. Trail width and times. I'll just say trail area.
Yeah.
This includes trail area. And this is what I'm struggling with, this, just, yeah, describing that, the bite, the bite of the cover. This includes trail area and,
Do we need that second sentence?
The impacted buffer
Yeah.
area?
About a work group on this.
what's that?
Oh, I'm just thinking, this is a complicated. It just looks complicated. I would say we could try to bring something back. That's
Yeah,
short.
well,
I mean,
this
to
is what
me,
we got back and it still needed tweaking, so.
Yeah. because I read the
Well,
combined buffer encroachment, right? Including trail width. Like, to me, that makes me think of the trail itself and not what's being, the piece of the cookie that's being bitten off.
Yeah, so we're getting rid of including the trail width, so we're basically just replacing it with this.
Oh, okay.
And maybe
All
we
right.
need the second
Oh,
section.
okay.
So
The
the
com-
combined total of all trail encroachments on a buffer zone.
The
Shall not
combined
exceed
total-
12%,
Total area. Can you get area in there?
or total area
Area.
of all trail encroachments on a buffer zone shall not exceed 5% of that original buffered area. To me, without the visual aid, and maybe we can just leave it as
Yeah.
is, but without the visual aid, you could easily read this and say, oh, well, I'm just doing length times width and I'm fine,
Right.
This doesn't really address the fact that, like any,
It's
original, like any buffer separated from the original zone is
By the new trail.
yeah, by the in trail is considered to be fragmented. Or
From the original buffer.
a little better, I don't know if it's perfect, but
Mhm.
yeah, but that you can read and I think imagine.
Mhm.
Any buffer separated from the original zone.
Can we include those drawings in the actual management plan? Like-
Yeah, I think so, that was my thought, is we just put them right in the section.
Speed drawings.
See, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, see, yeah, so we can just do that, like, see example 1 or whatever, or example 2, and then this one I think might be like. See example 1, I mean, we're gonna.
Definition diagram.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's isn't it the definitions rather than the example?
Oh, see, like,
Graphic number one is.
see diagram. Yeah, something like that, sure. Okay, and then do we want, we have 1 minute, although it doesn't take 10 minutes to close the meeting, so we're fine on time. For this last one, do you wanna leave this in here? Clustering where deviations are considered, they should be clustered in a line to avoid creating multiple separate buffer breaks to preserve large intact core habitat zones, or is this unnecessary because we've kind of already mentioned that up here at the top, deviations.
Yep.
We talk about they should be minor, purposeful, and
Yeah.
protective of core habitats.
Mhm.
And because Julian is gonna write up this sort of like paragraph with like the 6 points, that's going to talk about clustering anyway, right? That was one of the 6 points.
Consolidation. That's right.
Consolidation. So I think we should just axe this and then just say Julian to write.
It's in the draft minutes.
Okay. This is a reminder to me so that like, or yeah, I
Can
don't
you email it to him? He just insert it.
Sure.
And the paragraph is called.
Oh, you already wrote it up?
Other considerations.
Not a Benny's.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Well, yeah, so I'll just say,
Yeah.
yeah, I just was mostly doing it for a reminder, so
Yeah.
insert,
It's gonna be on my phone.
doing,
Other considerations, I think that's what
what's that?
other considerations. Or
Yeah.
additional considerations.
Yeah, I'll send you.
I don't know, I was just trying to, yeah,
But that could well, Julian, you're aiming basically though at getting rid of the whole numeric deal, or else, increasing it a lot. Right, so it's not like insert the language, because that could contradict what we have. I mean, it means, consider instead of insert, right? Or did I just not understand what you were talking about?
No, I said where we can put numbers, we should. And we should also put when there's I think the way that I put it was when there's a proposal for trail deviation, requester should note the ways in which the trail proposal takes into account the other 5 variables that Meredith Naughton discusses in her documents.
Oh, okay, well, look just below there in those 4 bullets.
Yeah.
Maybe that would fit into bullet 3.
It could, yeah, I mean, it's a little more specific, but yeah.
Yeah, but you could put maybe that would fit as those 6 points as examples in that 3rd bullet area, maybe.
Yeah.
okay, well, at least, next meeting, or you can email that to me, whenever, between now and the next meeting, Julian.
Yep.
You email me the text, I'll paste it into the document that will be in the packet for next meeting,
Okay.
so that we can all see it. And then we can discuss that paragraph. And then, we didn't really come to an agreement on the 5% and whether or not we want to use that or not. And then we just have a couple minor things at the very bottom of this, and then we're basically set on, hopefully, recreation, at least for now. I know we're gonna come back to the dog bite thing, but pretty damn close here. So, yeah, I think it's a good place to call it. We're 2 minutes over, 3 minutes over that agenda item.
Oh, just quickly. Sam, when's
Yeah,
the packet, when's the packet deadline gonna be? Just for Julian to know. If
the
we want to
packet
get that,
deadline, yeah, just like as a general statement, I always get the agenda and packet materials to Duncan the Friday before our meeting. It needs to be to him by the middle of the day, which means that if you're sending me something that you want to be in the packet, I'm normally working, during the day on Friday, so I'm not checking for mail.
Yeah.
Normally, either I'll send it to him Thursday night, or I'll have it all prepped and ready to press send before noon on Friday. So I typically like to get any packet items on, certainly by, I'd say 6 PM on the Thursday.
It's in the draft minutes, you guys will have them tonight.
Oh, great, cool. Great, perfect. So, yeah, that's usually the timeline is, if you get stuff to me by Thursday night, assuming it doesn't require a lot of, finessing or thought. If it's just an item for the packet, as long as I have it by Thursday night, it's good. If it's something that we're considering for the agenda and there needs to be some discussion about how we wanna put it on the agenda, then that would likely need to be sent to you earlier in the week.
Good.
Cool. So, yeah, thanks for including that in the minutes or sending it to me, or what, it sounds like I'll have it soon. So,
Yep.
Great. So we'll wrap this up and move on to the final item, which I guess I don't need to show on the screen anymore.
Business for upcoming
Yeah.
meetings
Oh,
would be next on the agenda.
yeah, sorry, I got a little lost here. I'm gonna stop sharing the screen.
Who's that guy?
Yeah, so we just have confirming our, yeah, do we have anything that we want to talk about at the next meeting? It sounds like we've got, I'll give you another update on Trailforks if there is one. We're gonna do mapping. Again, like mapping revisited, and then trail deviation revisited, with the visual aids from the mapping. But aside from that, that's pretty much everything, right? Then it's just like back to the poor appendices, which have been on the last 10 agendas, where it's taken us so long to get through the recreation section that eventually, once we finish the recreation, we will look at the appendices and make a decision on what we're doing there. So that's, yeah, any other items?
No.
Okay, so last thing is scheduling. So the next meeting, based on our current cadence, is the 22nd, which is a few days before Christmas. And I'm not sure what that looks like for people, for scheduling. So the people have thoughts, I think last meeting, people seem to think that it was fine to keep it on the 22nd, but.
Yep.
We good?
We do got a quorum.
Great, okay, so we'll do the 22nd, and then we don't necessarily have to decide it right now, but we do have 4 minutes before 8:30. So I noticed that because January.
Do we have a Martin Luther King conflict in our second meeting?
No,
January has,
oh, no, it's because of December. It's because of December. So December has 5 Mondays. So we've been meeting every other Monday, and it's always worked out to 2 meetings per month.
Yeah.
But because we're gonna meet on the 22nd and then we're off the 29th, which means we would land on the 5th, but that's actually 3 weeks before the normally scheduled ACF meeting on the 26th, which is the 4th Monday of the month. So my question is, do we want to meet on the 5th and have 3 weeks, between the 22nd and the 5th? Or I'm sorry, 2 weeks between the 22nd and the 5th, or would we rather have it the 3 weeks in January? I would say it probably is nicer to have it during the holidays.
let's have the holidays and meet again on the 12th
Yeah.
rather than on the 5th.
So that was a very long-winded way of saying that.
5th or
but
the 12th,
The
yeah.
12th,
Right.
do we like the 12th?
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
fine with the 12th.
Well, that's good.
Okay, so we will meet on the 12th.
6 PM?
Same as always, 6 to, yeah, so the next meeting will be December 22nd at 6. And then the meeting after that will be January 12th.
Actually, 3 weeks later, isn't it?
Exactly, 2 weeks from now, and then 3 weeks from then, so 5 weeks from now will be our next two meetings.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Well, with that, I think we're good, so thank you, everybody.
Move to adjourn.
Yeah,
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Sonia seconds.
Can I get a
Thanks,
motion to
Brad.
adjourn?
I just did.
See you later, guys.
Second?
Sonia
Second,
seconds.
Aye.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Bye.
I.
Okay, great. Thanks. See you, Brad.
See you later, guys. Thank you.
Should any more